This house belongs to Kevin now. My father's announcement echoed through the living room like a death sentence. My brother Kevin sat in Grandma's old rocking chair. Her chair, the one she had promised to me, with a smug grin spreading across his face. My mother nodded approvingly, already mentally redecorating. What none of them knew was that I had been waiting 15 years for this exact moment. And the document in my purse was about to turn their celebration into a nightmare. Let me tell you about the day my grandmother saved my life, and how she set the trap that would spring today. My name is Audrey Chambers, and I was born the wrong gender in a family that worshipped sons. My father, Gerald Chambers, came from 3 generations of men who believed that daughters were temporary, just visitors passing through until they became some other man's responsibility. Sons were legacy. Sons were forever. Kevin was born 2 years after me, and from that moment on, I became invisible. Everything went to Kevin. The new bicycle, the bigger bedroom, the private school education while I attended public school across town, the car on his 16th birthday while I took the bus until I could afford my own. Every advantage, every opportunity, every dollar of investment went to the son who would carry on the Chambers name. The only person who saw me, really saw me, was my grandmother, Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor had married into the Chambers family in 1962, and she had spent 60 years watching her husband, then her son, treat daughters like afterthoughts. She never said anything publicly. That wasn't her generation's way. But privately, she made me a promise. Audrey, she told me on my 18th birthday, your father is a fool, just like his father was. They think they understand power, but they only understand the obvious kind. Real power is patient. Real power waits. That night, she took me to see her lawyer. The Chambers family property had been in the family for 4 generations. The house was built by my great-great-grandfather in 1921, a beautiful craftsman on 3 acres of land in what was now a highly desirable suburb of Minneapolis. The property was worth approximately $1.2 million. The house itself may be $400,000, but the land beneath it was valued at over $800,000 due to development pressure in the area. Here's what my father never knew. The house and the land had separate deeds. My great-great-grandfather had been a cautious man. When he built the house, he structured the property so that the building and the land could be transferred independently. It was an unusual arrangement, designed to protect against creditors during the Depression. Over the generations, the family had forgotten about this quirk. Everyone assumed that owning the house meant owning the land. Everyone except Grandma Eleanor. She had discovered the separate deeds decades ago while organizing family documents. She never told anyone. She just waited, watching her son favor Kevin in everything, watching her granddaughter be pushed aside year after year. On my 18th birthday, she transferred the land deed into my name. The house remained in the family trust, controlled by my father. But the 3 acres underneath it? That belonged to me. Don't tell anyone, she instructed me. Not until the right moment. Your father will try to take it from you if he knows. But when he makes his move, and he will make a move, you'll be ready. How will I know when the right moment is? I asked. She smiled, that knowing smile that I missed so much after she passed. Oh, sweetheart. You'll know. Trust me. You'll know. Grandma Eleanor died 3 years later, peacefully in her sleep. She left me her rocking chair, her jewelry box, and a handwritten letter that I still keep in my nightstand. The land is your inheritance, Audrey. The chair and the jewelry are just symbols. But the land is power. Use it wisely and use it well. Make them see you. Make them remember that daughters are not afterthoughts. Love always, Grandma. For 15 years, I said nothing. I went to college on scholarships and student loans while Kevin's education was fully funded by our parents. I built a career as a commercial real estate attorney. Ironic, I know, while Kevin bounced between failed business ventures that my father bankrolled again and again. I got married, had 2 daughters of my own, and made sure they knew every single day that they were valued, seen, and loved. I was determined to break the cycle. Meanwhile, my brother's life was a parade of failures cushioned by family money. He married twice, divorced twice, and always landed back at the family home between disasters. He never held a job for more than a year. He never built anything. He never earned anything. But he was the son, and in my father's eyes, that was enough. I paid property taxes on the land every year, quietly, using my married name. I kept the deed in a safe deposit box alongside my passport and my grandmother's letter. I visited the property during holidays, biting my tongue as my father talked about Kevin's future inheritance, and my mother discussed what renovations Kevin would make when the house was his. They never once asked what I might inherit. They never once considered that I might want a piece of the family legacy. I was the daughter. I was already taken care of by my husband, they assumed, as if I hadn't built my own career and my own wealth through my own effort. The waiting was hard. There were moments when I wanted to scream the truth, to throw the deed in my father's face and watch his smug certainty crumble. But Grandma's voice always stopped me. Real power is patient. Real power waits. So I waited. For 15 years. Until the right moment finally arrived. My father called the family meeting on a Sunday afternoon in October. He was 73 years old, and he had decided it was time to formalize the estate plan. Translation. He was ready to officially hand everything to Kevin and cut me out completely. The whole family gathered in the living room of the house I had grown up in. The house that sat on land that belonged to me. Kevin was already there when I arrived, lounging in Grandma's rocking chair like he owned the place. Which I suppose he thought he was about to. "Audrey, good you're here," my father said, barely glancing at me. "Let's get started." He stood at the head of the room like a king addressing his court. My mother sat beside him, beaming. Kevin's current girlfriend, a woman I had met exactly twice, sat in the corner, already texting on her phone. As you all know, this property has been in the Chambers family for 4 generations. It represents everything our family has built. And it's time to ensure that legacy continues properly. He paused for effect. "This house belongs to Kevin now." Kevin's grin widened. My mother actually applauded, soft, polite clapping that made my stomach turn. I sat in my chair, perfectly still, my hand resting on my purse. "I've had the paperwork prepared," my father continued, pulling out a manila folder. "I'm transferring the property deed to Kevin effective immediately. Audrey, you'll receive a small monetary inheritance, $50,000, which I think is more than fair, given that you married well and don't need the family home. $50,000. A property worth $1.2 million was going to Kevin, and I was getting $50,000 because I married well." Kevin leaned forward. "Thanks, Dad. I've already got some ideas for the place. Thinking about converting the back acreage into a rental development. Could be worth a fortune." My father nodded approvingly. "Smart thinking, son. That's exactly the kind of initiative this family needs." I reached into my purse and pulled out the document I had been carrying for 15 years. The land deed, notarized and certified, showing clear ownership transferred from Eleanor Chambers to Audrey Chambers on my 18th birthday. I placed it on the coffee table. "There's just one problem with that plan, Kevin." Everyone turned to look at me. I think it was the first time they had really looked at me all afternoon. "The house, sure. Dad can give you the house. But the ground it sits on." I tapped the deed with my finger. "That's been in my name for 15 years. Grandma transferred it to me on my 18th birthday. The land, all 3 acres of it, belongs to me." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. My father's face went from confusion to disbelief to fury in the span of 3 seconds. "That's impossible. The house and the land are the same deed. They've always been the same deed." "Actually, they haven't." I kept my voice calm, professional. The same tone I used in contract negotiations. Great-great-grandfather separated them in 1925. It's an unusual arrangement, but it's perfectly legal. The house deed and the land deed have been distinct documents for almost 100 years. You just never bothered to check. My father snatched the deed from the table and stared at it, his hands trembling. "This has to be forged." "Mother would never." "She would," I said quietly. "And she did, because she saw what you refused to see, Dad. She saw that you were giving everything to Kevin and nothing to me. She saw that you treated your daughter like an afterthought. So she gave me the one thing you couldn't take away. This is ridiculous." Kevin was on his feet now, his smug grin replaced by panic. "You can't own the land and not the house. That doesn't make any sense. Actually, it's quite common in certain property law structures." I smiled at him. A real smile, the first genuine one I had given my family in years. "I'm a commercial real estate attorney, Kevin. This is literally what I do for a living. The arrangement is called a ground lease. You can own a building without owning the land it sits on. It happens all the time." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "So here's what's going to happen. You can have the house, Kevin. Dad can give it to you, just like he planned. But if you want to keep that house on my land, you're going to pay rent. Fair market value for 3 acres in this area is approximately $4,000 per month. Rent is due on the 1st. My mother finally found her voice. Audrey, you can't do this to your own family. Family? I laughed. You spent my entire life telling me I wasn't really part of this family. Kevin got everything. I got nothing. You didn't even pretend to treat us equally. I picked up my purse. Well, Grandma disagreed. And she made sure I had something you couldn't take away. The land. The foundation. The thing you forgot to even think about. My father slammed his fist on the table. I'll sue. I'll take this to court. No judge will uphold this absurd arrangement. Go ahead. I pulled out my card and placed it on the table. I'll recommend a good attorney. But I should warn you, I've had 15 years to prepare for this moment. The deed is airtight. The transfer was legal. And I've been paying property taxes on that land since I was 18 years old. You want to go to court? I'll see you there. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back at my family. At my father's rage, my mother's horror, my brother's dawning comprehension that his inheritance had just become a massive financial burden. One more thing. Grandma's rocking chair? That was willed to me specifically. Kevin, get out of it. They did go to court. Of course they did. My father hired 3 different lawyers over the course of 18 months, spending over $200,000 in legal fees trying to invalidate the land transfer. Every single challenge failed. The deed was legitimate. The transfer was legal. Grandma Eleanor had covered every base. In the end, Kevin was left with a choice: pay rent or move the house. Since you can't exactly pick up a 100-year-old craftsman and relocate it, paying rent was his only option. He couldn't afford it. Kevin had no job, no savings, and no skills. The house my father had given him was worthless without the land. He tried to sell it, but who wants to buy a house when they don't own the ground beneath it? The offers that came in were insultingly low. People offering pennies on the dollar for a structure that might be torn down anyway. After 6 months of unpaid rent, I sent a formal eviction notice. Not for the house, I didn't own that, but for the land. The house could stay, but no one could legally occupy it without my permission. Kevin moved back in with my parents. At 40 years old. With nothing to show for his life except a house he couldn't use and a family name that meant nothing without the land to back it up. My father stopped speaking to me entirely. My mother sends occasional guilt-laden emails that I delete without reading. Kevin has tried reaching out twice, both times to ask if I would reconsider the arrangement. I declined. Last month, I finally did something with the land. A developer had been interested for years. The same developer Kevin had fantasized about partnering with for his rental development scheme. I sold them the rights for $1.4 million, with a clause requiring them to demolish the existing structure. The house my father gave Kevin, the house that was supposed to be his legacy, will be torn down next spring to make way for a small apartment complex. Affordable housing, actually. Something that will help people who need it. I donated half the proceeds to a scholarship fund for first-generation female college students. The other half went into trust funds for my 2 daughters. Grandma's rocking chair sits in my living room now. Every evening, I sit in it and watch my daughters do their homework, their futures secure, their value never questioned. Sometimes I imagine Grandma sitting beside me, that knowing smile on her face. Real power is patient, she used to say. Real power waits. She was right. I waited 15 years. And when the moment came, I didn't just get the land. I got everything.